Hi, my name is Samantha, and today I will be talking about why zoos and aquariums should be banned. Now, as you can see, I've displayed two pictures of these very poor conditions, one from a zoo and the other one from an aquarium. Now, these are the conditions that these animals are living in everyday lives. They're not out in the wild where they're supposed to be. They're taken out of their natural habitat and placed into this strange new world to them out of concrete, and they're isolated. They don't know where they are, they're lost, confused, and they're going to be kept in these captivity rooms that are not large enough compared to the wild. Now, I'd like to talk to you about a story from when I was little. When I was a little girl, I remember my first experience with the zoo. I was only about 10 years old and I went and I just saw the faces of these animals and they looked so sad and so depressed and I was just heartbroken. I remember seeing this giraffe, large giraffe, kept in this little confined space and I'm just like so large with long legs, how it's supposed to stretch it out? And I felt so bad for them that I couldn't bear just being there another minute. And the conditions that they were in, they were just kept in such small spaces. And I began to think to myself, when they were out in the wild and they had so much freedom and they were not just kept captive. And I began to think to myself of why do we have the right to do this to them? They don't deserve this. They're living beings just like me and you. So that was the first time where I began to think to myself that these zoos and aquariums should not be allowed. They should be banned. And the main topics that I would like to focus about today with you are the animals that are affected physically and psychologically, the increase of the animals dying, and the truth behind trying to save the species. And what actions can we take to help this cause? I would like to share a quote with you from Mara Cummings. All creatures are deserving of a life free from fear and pain. Now, if you look into that little poor soul, you could just see it heartbroken and just kept in the cage, all isolated and confused and just kept captive. They don't deserve that. Now, to discuss some of the physical aspects of what they go through, here you see a tiger, and when it is confined and isolated in spaces like these, they tend to circle around the area for hours, and they just constantly do that because they're just not used to being in that environment. They're not used to, they don't understand. Another thing they tend to do is they tend to pace back and forth in the same spot. They also sometimes rub themselves against the cage or whatever they're in because they don't want to be in the small space. In the aquatic and marine life animals, such as polar bears, penguins, fishes, and all these, they actually they don't have they don't have clean tanks, and the water that they use are filled with chemicals and all these sort of like viruses that are not um they're not used to being out in the wild in the ocean, and they have all this freedom of the huge like environment, and now they're being transferred into this tiny tank where they're supposed to live their lives, and most of them don't even get to live their lives. And in a psychological aspect, their mental health is just so horrible because they're being kept trapped in these confined areas, and they get depressed and they don't really they're taken away from their families. A lot of the cubs from their mothers are taken away, and they're trying to like program them to live by themselves, and they just get depressed, and it's just really sad. Now, animals are dying at a higher rate due to being in these zoos and aquariums. As we can see from EAZA, 5,000 animals have died, and they're dying because they're being kept in these zoos and aquariums. And millions of people support this. 170 million people have just come to zoos over the past years. They come to the zoos and they watch the animals, and they're suffering, and it's just awful all around. Now, not only are they dying, but we have here an example that I would like to show, which is of this gorilla, and it was in the Cincinnati Zoo, and a child got left in his cage and found his way towards his cage, and they actually shot him down. His name was Harambe, and they shot him and killed him instead of using the proper protocols by using a tranquilizer to make him fall asleep. They killed him instead. Another aquatic park that I would like to talk about is about SeaWorld. How they mask the horrors behind the scenes, that they show all these nice tricks with orcas and all this, but in reality, why you see this picture, they're being abused. You see their teeth are drilled, their collapsed dorsal, and they have rake marks all over their skin. Now they are also kept in these little tiny tanks, which don't provide enough water to cover them, and they're left being in the shallow water, which exposes their skin to the air, and it makes their skin kind of like ashy and peel off, and all these just horrible things happen to them by being in these tanks. Now you may ask yourself, but I thought these zoos kept endangered species from going extinct. Well, that's not the truth necessarily, you see. This is the death of the last Pinta Island giant tortoise. Now, it's the last one of its kind and it is extinct. The zoos tried to rescue it and they failed. And this is the most cases this happens. And not always is it because of the zoo's fault, but just we're taking these wild animals and trying to rescue them when they're zoos. Zoos are not meant to do that. Now there are other programs that do focus their abilities and do try to help these animals and have succeeded, but these are not zoos. Zoos do not do that. And as stated in Justin Worldland's article, which was written "The Future of Zoos," he states that this is a myth, that they've been unsuccessful and he was the last one of his species. Now, what can you do to help? There are organizations that help these endangered species, such as the World Wildlife Fund, which is the one on the left, and then the other one on the right is the Wildlife Conservation Society. Now, these two, if you do have the sufficiency to help, then you can donate to them, and they will also help by helping rescue them and all the necessary that they need. Now, an alternative to zoos are holographic zoos. Yes, that is right. You're seeing that. In Germany and Japan, they have made this new sort of invention where they, instead of using the zoos and using real animals, they have made holographic zoos and demonstrated them even at aquariums. And they've shown like, and it's just a magnificent show. I wish I could be in one. And they just show the exact replica of the animal, but we're not hurting the animals, we're not abusing the animals, and it's an innovation which is so wonderful. And I hope to see the rest of the countries adapt to this new sort of environment where that way we can save the animals. Now, are you going to be part of the solution or the problem? I encourage you all to, when you're planning a vacation, family vacation, skip the zoo and skip the aquariums. Go out in your backyard and find the wildlife and just acknowledge it and observe it there. But don't go to these zoos and aquariums where they are mistreating these animals, these poor animals, and they're abusing them. Don't do that. Just go out into your natural habitats and just see the animals living their best lives in the world. I promise you, they will thank you.